because every day you make that choice of what you're going to teach. And so as a teacher, to implement the Indian Ed for All. And so what I'm going to show you is how I implemented the culture in our school as a Nakoda woman educator and principal. And so here is my PowerPoint. Could you see it?
Yeah, we not yet.
Okay, so let me see. Resume share. Okay. Not yet. Okay, resume share. Well, I'm gonna stop share again and see if I can do this. Do you see it?
It says you're sharing screen, but we're just seeing black.
Okay, all right, stop share. I should have tried it, Jetty. It was showing, it's right here. Let's see. Okay, hold shift to select multiple windows. Nope. Shoot.
Worked before.
I've done this a million times since
Yeah.
COVID, and I wonder what the deal is here. Stop it, share. Let me see here. Okay. Does anybody have any tricks that they know of? Hold shift to select multiple windows. Jennifer, I am not able to share right now.
So Reyna, this is Zach
Yeah.
Hawkins. I put a little note in the chat if you want to
Okay.
try sending it to me.
Hi,
Okay.
how can I help?
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint
Oh,
that
I
I
can't
need
hear
to show.
you.
I'm not on mute.
We'll try to get this fixed soon here. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Okay, Zach.
Let's see. Why don't you go ahead and stop sharing
Okay.
and then go ahead and try sharing again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We'll get this figured out.
Okay, so now share. Do you see it?
I do not. So I am guessing, are you using a PowerPoint?
It is a Google Slides yeah, it's a Google Slides.
Okay, your monitor is not talking to your Zoom app. So you need to, I believe it's mirror. I don't have your computer in front of me. So let's see, why don't you send me, there we go. There we go.
You see it?
I see
Yeah.
it.
Yay. Oh gosh, thank you.
Okay.
Yay.
Awesome.
Good job, Jennifer.
All right, thanks everybody.
Okay. So during the pandemic, well, before the pandemic started, this is just a sad part of life that I have to share, is that we had a suicide cluster at our school. It really hit home, and for me, because the kids were my kids' best friends, and there was 3 right in a row that were just ate at my table. And so my very first day as a principal, I spent at our tribal chambers planning with the council and a bunch of upset community members, tribal members about the suicide. And so they asked me, what are you going to do? And all I could think of was the old saying, Maslow before Bloom's. And so just the relationships, because that's how I felt like I became the principal, was the having good relationships with our students and families and creating relationships. So the very first year that I was there, I set up a lot of plans on how we could, and researched a lot of things on how to help with suicide clusters. And so I had things ready for the students. And then when the teachers came, I realized that they were the ones that needed it too. And so we also set up a whole program for them for the year. And then when the pandemic came to be, we had a little bit of time in there because we were of our schedule to all study 1 hour a day on mental health tiered systems of support. And then the following year, Bella Belowski was offered as a trainer to the schools because of the pandemic, and the OPI chose to have the schools make be accountable for social emotional learning. And we made a plan for that. And so so you're going to see some results of that in here. Okay. And so we start off with our mission statement of the Hayes Lodgepole Schools. They always say that the culture of our school is 30 years old. So that would be, 90s, that's when, so that would be in the 90s. Well, a lot of the people that I graduated with became teachers also, if they were A'aniiih teachers or Nakoda teachers. But when I came to Hayes, they had changed our mission statement. And as a Nakoda, I learned a lot about White Dog in my life. White Dog was a warrior. His family was taken from him in war, and so he became just kind of like a warrior that helped other younger fellows to help become warriors and protect their families. And so this came from a Napeshi song. A Napeshi song is a song that warriors make to bolster themselves, to give themselves confidence when they were doing anything. And so the part of the song is to instill strength and knowledge to walk anywhere on earth and fear nothing. And that's a White Dog song, a warrior song. And so it's just, when I came to the school, it felt so natural. I'm from Fort Belknap. I grew, I'm from here, I'm from the mountains, but I lived at Fort Peck. My kids are from Fort Peck. I lived at Fort Peck until I moved back here. So I left when I was about 18 and moved back. I think I was 29 or 30 when I moved back. And so, so a lot of the history that I learned came from the Nakodas at Fort Peck, which we're all related. Our clans are really related. They were really, really closely related. And so some of the stuff that I was learning when I came back, I already had a lot of knowledge of from Sweats, and one of my teachers, one of my father-in-law, his name is Bob Four-Star, Chief Buffalo Stops 4 times. He was able to teach me a lot since I was, I don't know, teenager, when I started kind of caring, and until his death, I was able to learn from him, and he shared a lot with me. I really had we had a good relationship, learning relationship, teacher-student relationship. And so we created a goal for our school. And so here's the goal of our school, is to establish a trauma-informed educational community with school-wide values and expectations. We respect responsibility and safety, be yourself, we are family. Those last two, be yourself, we are family, those are expectations that our students created. And then so we are all related by implementing the T-Bird mental health tiered system of support. So what we wanted to do is number it out, set universal expectations, cultural language expectations, classroom practices, goals, and celebrations. Students will practice self-regulation and social skills through daily practice. Hayes Lodgepole Schools will create opportunities for students to participate in social ceremonial practices of the A'aniiih and Nakoda. So you can see here by just reading it that it's a mixture of the Western school system and Nakoda expectations. And so I felt like these all really worked good together. And we were able to really inspire a lot of people by showing them more culturally relevant ways of healing. And so in a couple of slides, I'll show you what I came up with a couple of young adults that were my students, and they were also friends of the students that took their lives in the suicide cluster. And so they were also students here at Hayes Lodgepole. And when you're a student at Hayes Lodgepole, you leave with a technical skill, and the technical skill is the language. And so since I've been the principal here, I had 3 language teachers that I helped get their class 7. They were our students, and I helped them get their class 7, and they taught for us. And now we have an immersion school. They started taking students, it hasn't been a year that they've had students. And so a lot of those teachers were our students. And so it's really important to make sure that your language and your culture is in your school, because the language and the culture is not only going to help their entire being, it also will give them a method of supporting their family, and it will give them another method of being a community leader. And it's all based on culture, and culture is one of the only things that has no hate, no biases, no hate, no derogatory words or actions. That's not acceptable. It's not Nakoda. It's not A'aniiih. Nakoda is, they say Nakoda means, like the friendly people, or just people. And so Nakoda, like when my brother Tuffy, he told me that when you say, you talk about humans in general, they're a Nakoda. So a Nakoda is a human. It's not from the tribe. It's everyone in general. So that tells you there's no biases. There's no prejudice. So we were all related in our eyes. And then A'aniiih is the upright person. And I always tell my students that when I'm talking to them, because I'm the disciplinary. And when I have my students in, because I'm the principal, I tell them that what I expect of them. I don't lecture them in this or that. I just tell them, I expect the truth from you, because you're a young Nakoda woman, or you're a young A'aniiih man, and that's what I expect of you. And when I tell them that, they offer the truth, right? And I also tell them that we're here to problem solve and not to be getting in trouble. And you're not here to be to face all these consequences. What we're here to do right now is to solve the problem. And so when I tell them that, they automatically melt in my hand and tell the truth. And but they do. They really appreciate that expectation of themselves. So Pax Good Behavior Game, we started this this classroom-based strategy, and we are using that still. The classes that use it regularly, they show a lot of progress, and they show a lot of togetherness. And that's the classes that don't do it, they usually should do it. And so Pax Behavior Game, it's a classroom-based strategy that allows students to grow together, and is the best way I can say it. There's no fails. Like one student doesn't fail by themselves. They all grow together. So Pax Good Behavior Game, I thought that was one of the, and when Lana explains the cultural benefits of it, or the cultural side of it, it really makes sense. And I could not even begin to compare to her because she did a whole study and applied it to her Blackfeet ways. So I couldn't even describe how she explained it, but it matches. Okay, and so then we also do the building the schools, tribal community connections. We do Indigenous MBI, and you can see where this picture in the background, that's outside of our school. That brick that since has been painted, and you might see a picture on here. I'm pretty sure I put a picture on here of the painted brick, and we have all of our A'aniiih and Nakoda leaders from past and present on there. And so it's really beautiful back there. What we did this past summer, I had a little grant. It was the homeless student grant. And so they said, all you have to do is, help, help use this money to help supply like education or learning loss or leadership opportunities to our homeless students. And so what we have is 265 students, 129 of them are homeless. And so that's half of our students. The students eligible to work was of course it was 15 on up. And so what we did is we sent out applications to all of our homeless students, and then we so that they could work over the summer. And what we did is we set some SMART goals. We learned how to make those old school shades. My mom used to tell me stories about Lodgepole, and she said that no one cooked inside in the houses. That they took their wood burning stoves outside, and they had shades, and everybody cooked outside. And so everywhere I move now, and I've done this since before my kids were born. No, it was when my kids were born, after my kids were born. I put those old school shades up so that when we gather, we can sit outside and enjoy it outside. And then I hired a shop teacher, and they learned how to build benches, and they had a bunch of little beautification projects all around the school, and they worked all the month of July. We helped them get their tribal IDs, their driver, or not their driver's license, their tribal IDs. What else? They filled out a whole application. They were able to cash their checks. And so they had that little process that they learned also. They, like I said, they made SMART goals and finished them. And every day we just went over our SMART goals and made new plans and then implemented, and they did a lot of teamwork. It was really awesome. And so some of the other things that we do with the Indigenous MBI, and this is what I started this long ago when I was doing summer school. And so as a leader, I had to start somewhere. And so I started with 21st Century. I had the BOMB 21st Century program. And I made sure that I tried to outdo myself every single week. We tried to get as many students in as possible. And I always told the students how many students we had in, so they knew that I was counting and that I wanted a bid. And that's how I started, was 21st Century. And then I started also the summer school. And so what we did is we had credit recovery in the summer, and every morning we would have a morning meeting, because the students that I had in summer school, it was a credit recovery. It was open to everybody, but the credit recovery students that I had, they had a hard time staying motivated. And so what I would do is tell them how many hours they had in, because 1 hour of summer school, because we did 90 hours of math, so 1 hour of summer school is 1 day. So every day I'd update them, and we'd smudge and we'd pray. And so the very next school year, we started the school year like that. And so how we start the school, we start the day is we smudge, we pray, we do our pledges in our A'aniiih and Nakoda, and the pledge to the flag. We give blessings and announcements. We had principals come in, and we kept that morning meeting going. I wasn't the principal, and sometimes they would bawl the kids out. And so we would take the principals aside and say, hey, the morning meeting isn't to bawl our kids out, it's to start their day, because we want to start their day like we would at our own home, with smudging good things, because they might not have had that. They might not have woken up to that, or and we just want to start their day out better. And so that's how we did that. And then that was really a good experience. We also have student leaderships with seasonal ceremonies. We've had so many different kind of activities, and it seems like we do a different one every year. But we had namings, we had elders, and we've done a ton of traditional feeds to celebrate people. And the students always prepared everything. And so we had a throwing of the ball ceremony. I did that for 21st Century. We made moccasins, and we totally decked the girls out, had them everything they needed for their ceremony, and they did their throwing of the ball ceremony, because I normally love to teach the junior high level. I'm a K-8 teacher, and I probably should have been a high school teacher, but then again, I like the first kindergarten, first grade too. So I maybe I'm in the right spot, but I like the junior high. We get a lot of writing opportunities and speaking and leadership opportunities. And I teach them a lot of literature that will help them build their virtues and their, their self, and give them confidence. One of my favorite books, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, I teach those levels so that the students know that they know what's best for them. They need to speak up and speak what's best for them, and that your voice matters, and your voice matters more than any other person, because you're speaking for yourself, and you have to do that. And the Pedagogy of the Oppressed kind of has that good outline for that. So I teach that with them, things like that. So I'm gonna go back to make sure I'm going in the wrong direction. Okay, tribal elders and leaders, community leadership, and I can't see what I put on the bottom there. So we'll go to the next slide. We also implement restorative practices in our school. We had a dean or a dropout prevention specialist that he used restorative practices in his 7-12 discipline approaches, and I always have too, in our classroom and outside of our classroom. So some of the things that we do with restorative practices is we practice relationship buildings. We use restorative circles. The student council organizes activities each week that kind of helps them become better leaders, and it gets the other kids motivated, so that they have their peers showing them what to do, or leading the events, and it makes it a little bit more fun for the students. We have campus beautification, safe talks. We've had a lot of trainings for suicide prevention. And then if you could see in the background here, that's our big 24-foot teepee. It's so huge. It's so beautiful when it's up. The gentleman that is speaking, his name is John Allen, and he's one of our lodge makers. And he our Nakoda lodge maker, and he came and talked with his wife. And we often have the husband and wives come in and talk to our students, and that gives the girls and the boys somebody to look up to. And that's really important for our students. I was reading a book, and I read the book a million times, Pretty Shield, since I was a kid, because Alma Snow is married to my uncle, and they live right next door to each other. So she's my grandma and he's my grandpa. And so they live right next door to us, our land in the valley along the Milk River. And so I grew up with her, and when that book came out, she brought it to Fort Belknap, and we all thought that, we thought so much of them. And her grandma speaks about us and our families in her books, and Alma speaks about our families in her books also. She shared with us continuously. And what I was getting at was in the Pretty Shield book, Goes Ahead's wife was being described, and what she said was that you take a little bit of all the people that you want to be like, and you learn from them. And so it was Pretty Shield that was in Goes Ahead's wife's camp, and she said that when she was the wife of a chief, and she said that whenever she'd go into her teepee, she was always welcomed like she was just a child, but she was welcomed like she was really somebody important, and she was fed, and her teepee was always really clean. In her they always fed, she always fed, and she always had really good food, and always had something good for her to eat. And she would visit her, and it always smelled like sweetgrass. And her teepee, she said in there, she never saw her teepee where the blankets were down. It was always nice and made up nicely. And her kids and her husband's clothing was always nice and fresh and white from the hides, and her teepee was always white. It was not every year she had a new teepee, and she would share with her stuff with the other people. And her daughter always had a new play teepee right next to her, and her balls were always painted perfectly, and her dolls, everything was always perfect. And so I learned from that, for myself, like, you take stuff from people and you look at them, because not everybody is exactly how you want to be, or has your experiences or likes. So you just look at the people that you admire and learn from them. And so by that, when we bring in our elders or bring in our leaders and their wives, then our kids could learn from them. They could take the good things from them, and then those people also could share, and it expands our student circle. And that's the main thing that our students need, for their life, is to have a lot of support and a lot of people. And you never know who's going to be your best support. You never know who's going to be the one that is going to be there for you and help you, because it's not always your family. It could be your relatives from down the line. I grew up in a house of Cricket Dylan, Jolene, Line, a bunch of women, and they so I learned a lot from them. And I grew up with them because their daughter or granddaughter, niece, was my cousin and my best friend. So I spent a lot of time with them. And I tried to learn from them, and they're just really great people. And I still, to this day, do things with them, like fast with them. And we meet up at dinners and we really have good talks. And I learn something new from them all the time. But their main thing that they taught me was laughter. They are so funny. And so that's one of the things that we want to implement with the elders. So culture and language preservation. Culture and language preservation, like I said, is so important to us because it's pretty much a tradition for us. We graduate students that could speak Nakoda or A'aniiih or have a real interest in it. Right now, this is the first year that we didn't have 2 teachers, and most of our teachers are moving down to the immersion school. And that's why public schools need to quit being toxic, because we are losing good people to places like that don't have toxic environments. Those places are started by teachers that were tired of the politics or the environment, and the turnovers, the school boards letting go like the brightest people, like the cream of the crop, the most educated, most honored people on a reservation, then they let them go. One of my favorite bosses, he's a doctor. He was one of my probably like 3rd boss, I guess. I admired him so much, and he wasn't treated right. And so it's like, gosh, we need to learn how to keep our people at home. And so we have to have culture and language in our schools, in our tribal schools. If you want to support Native students in your schools that aren't on the reservation, you need culture and language in there, because when you strengthen the person's core, when they know who they are, they're unwavered. And so you could be in the worst situation possible, and you're going to stand up for what's right, because you have that integrity, and it comes from your culture, comes from your language. You know that you're supposed to you're supposed to be allowed to do things. So as a Nakota woman, I've been told by different older women that we're supposed to walk behind our men. We're not supposed to pray in front of people. But I just happen to know that, my grandma's song is, wherever you go, you can send your voice to the creator and you will be heard. And to me, that song doesn't tell me that I have to walk behind a man or I can't pray. It tells me that I need to do that anywhere I go, I can do that and I will make a difference. So it's good to know who you are. And because your own people, with types of lateral oppression and whatnot, they will try to convince you into their thinking. You need to know who you are. You need to learn your language. You need to learn your songs. There's nothing negative in our culture. And I've been told this a million times, that we started, and I'm sorry, you're not supposed to talk about religion or anything like that, but I have a point here. And so what I was told is that when you are scared of things, when you are, what is that word, superstitious, that's not a virtue, one of our virtues. It came from the Bible, it came from the priests, it came from people telling us that our culture was kind of evil. And so is the patriarchy or misogyny that you see in a lot of the communities. You see it all the time. I was listening to a speech, graduation speech, and I went back 30 years ago. It was 1 week ago. And it took us about 30, 50 years. The comments that were made were misogynistic. They were political. There was nothing good about it. And I don't know if I would have known that if I didn't have my culture behind me, or if I didn't have the confidence that I have as a Nakota woman. And that's what you will get when you know your culture and your language. And so that's why we have to do that for our students. It will strengthen them. They'll be able to walk anywhere on earth and fear nothing, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to try to to get their way, and you need to be strong. And so on this picture here, what you see is we have our Thunderbird. This was during the pandemic. We had our first graduation outside. And so see that those teepees there, we put those up. It was during the pandemic. We put those teepees up and we painted the football field for our graduation, so our students can be honored outside. There was a lot of schools that were doing online or virtual graduations, and we did this. We didn't have any spread of COVID. We had no problems, and so that was the way to go. And our students really felt honored. They thought they were going to get gypped, and so they were really happy. And right here is a group of our students singing. The drum that they were on, John Stiffarm, he now teaches in Harlem, but he was one of my brothers that I taught with his Lodgepole. We went on a buffalo hunt, and we do that with our students. When you go on a buffalo hunt, you could get your leaders, your tribal leaders together, our cultural leaders, our spiritual leaders in their pipes, and they will pray for the buffalo, for us, in for our students and for our year. And then so that's what they did. We had all of our lodge builders there, and we seated the students, the oldest girl and the oldest boy, you girls on one side, boys on the other side. The youngest are the oldest all the way down to the youngest. And so we seated the girls like that and the boys like that, and then we put our little kids in front of them to kind of babysit them. And we were able to have a really nice pipe ceremony, no noise from the students. They were all listening, and they had older students there with them, loving them up and showing them attention and modeling respect and how to behave in a ceremony. And then we took that hide and we made that drum. And so plan cultural events for the year. We think seasonal, plan classroom expectation, plan school-wide, so this was kind of a little activity that we were doing. It was, this PowerPoint went with a kind of like an introduction for our teachers, and then I kept adding to it, and then I would show it every so often to kind of show what our, like if we were having a ceremony or if we were having something, adding something new to our mix, I would show them where it was in our plan. So I showed them at the beginning of the year, and anytime we would do something, I would kind of show them our PowerPoint so they could see where it fit into their lives. And so this one here, number 6, implement tiered system of support with bi-weekly team meetings. That was probably the most beneficial thing that we did, was just to implement that tiered system of support. And you got to remember, culture is the tier 1, it's for everybody. And then you can get down to the ceremonies, like if you had a wiping a tear ceremony, naming ceremony, sweat, anything like that, then it would be a tier 2. It would be the kids that don't have that. Okay, and so here's our tiered system of support. And our goal was to create a mental health tiered system of support. And so all students get universal screenings, A'aniiih and Nakoda culture language, Pax Behavior Game, universal expectations, T-Bird instructional model. And this, I'm a teacher and I was really hardcore, and everybody's like, hates testing. Is like, no, I want testing. I want to make sure that the kids, the teachers that come to our reservation aren't screwing around, that they're giving our kids the best. We need to have that testing. And so this T-Bird instruction model means a lot, because it ensures that the teachers know that they are using best practices with our students to create engaging lessons, and it's expected every period. And so the T-Bird instructional model is one of the number 1 things that's going to help our students' mental health. And so it's the number 1 thing I believe that will help our students' mental health, is to be engaged and to be engaged in education and learning. Just think how you feel when you are learning, when you are at your peak, when you're doing something engaging, you feel great. You feel like you can do anything. And so that's super important for our mental health tiered system of support, engaging lessons. And then social emotional learning, K-12, we had this all implemented for a while, and then we lost our teacher for this. And so the teachers then took over the social emotional learning curriculum, and it didn't go as well because they had other things to do. And also some of the interventions that we would apply.
And Reyna, we've got about 4 minutes left.
Oh man, I'm really windy. I spent a lot of time. Okay, so tier 2 Dean of students. And so these are just some more things that we've talked about that we have for all of our tier 2 students and tier 1 students. Check in, check out, class pass, skills group. We all learned a lot of this stuff from Bella Belowski, and we didn't even have an idea what mental health looked like in the school. Once after we took her training, then we realized that we didn't know what we were talking about before, but now we know, and now we are able to do better. And so then the last tier is mental health liaison, students in transition liaison, wraparound family student counselor, and mental health referrals. And we were able to do all of this stuff. We have a psychologist now that comes in. And so we were able to implement that whole thing. And I thought that was one of the more important things that we've done this past year. And then actually the past 3 years of me being the principal was getting this underway. Our mental health is important, and everybody needs to keep that. Our students' mental health is important. Our mental health is important, and everybody needs to keep that in the forefront. This is just some of we had like over 50% of our were risk factors, or we're high risk students. And so that just shows that. Here's our events. So we had an observant day or week actually, and we wanted A'aniiih and Nakoda cultural event for the year. So what we did was, I'm going through this really fast. I'm trying to find my agenda. I don't think it's on here. Okay, so this is the beginning of it. So what we did was we did this 3 years in a row. We created 1 week where students learned cultural methods of coping, like art therapy, horse therapy, sweating. We putting up teepees, traditional games, foods. We also had the ceremonies of the buffalo hunt. Those were really healing events. The kids, I mean, they don't experience anything like that. Also, learning how to offer tobacco. When I did that with my alternative boys, it was so adorable. They're like the bad kids or whatever, they are supposed to be. And they were with me. I had 10 of them, and they're all about 6 foot to 6'4". And so, I taught them how to offer tobacco and how to tobacco elders. And when we would do that, when we'd go to the elders, it was so cute because they would circle the elders, and the elders were just tiny, and they felt so honored. And the boys were, a big presence in their house. And so the elders came to our events, and they learned how to do that. I thought that was really important, and I thought it was really great. And
Hey,
so,
Reyna,
yeah,
we're right at the end of your time, actually.
Okay.
So I don't know, Jennifer, you want to?
I can listen to Reyna all day, so I totally get it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going through these pictures so that you could see we really honor our athletes too. We sew for them so that when they go, they look sharp. Every year we deck them out. This was just something else, but we all wore ribbon skirts that day. And so that's it. Okay, I'm gonna stop share. Okay.
Thank you, Reyna.
Hey guys.
As always, we hope that you can attend any other part of the conference too.
Yeah, yes, I know. I was trying to get on those things. I said, I better get myself